Windows 10 is going to be end of life on the 14th of October 2025. But what does that actually mean? And do I really need to buy new computers? In this video, we're going to help you answer those questions and run through some of your options for upgrading your computers to Windows 11. First of all, quick introduction. My name is Matt and I run a company called Labyrinth Technology. We help empower businesses with their IT and cybersecurity. You can find a link to my LinkedIn profile in the video description. The clock is ticking and you really cannot still be using Windows 10 after the 14th of October 2025. And the reason for that is because when an operating system becomes end of life, it means the vendor, i.e. Microsoft in this case, stops releasing updates and security patches for it. Your systems become significantly more vulnerable to a cyber attack. Your systems will also become far less stable because all of the applications that you're using, the vendors of those applications will stop developing and testing those applications for Windows 10. So you'll start to experience bugs or software just completely not working. So you really do have to get out of Windows 10 before October. The clock is ticking. So what is actually different in Windows 11? Well, there are a lot of additional benefits, features and security enhancements, but from an end user perspective, you're really not going to notice that much difference. The key difference is that the start menu is in the middle of the screen, but otherwise the start menu functionality and search box is pretty much the same. It's just laid out slightly differently. Most of your users probably won't even notice the difference. So the first option to consider naturally is upgrading to Windows 11, which you can do for free. However, if you need to use an IT consultant to help you manage that upgrade process, there may be some associated upgrade costs for that project, depending on how many devices you have. But if you are a very small business, you don't have IT or you're a personal user, it's something you can do fairly easily yourself. I'll put a link in the video description to help you with that. So first of all, before you can even consider using Windows 11, whether you're buying a new PC or upgrading your existing computers, you need to actually make sure that all of your software supports Windows 11. And that's everything from the applications on your device to printers and other external peripherals. So you or your IT need to check that everything you're using is supported. And if it's not, you may need to think of either using different applications or updating that software if there's a newer version of it that does support Windows 11. You can usually check whether software supports Windows 11 by looking at the manufacturer's website. So when deciding whether to work with the existing hardware you've got or replace it, you need to think about a few things here. First of all, sustainability. You don't really want to be throwing away devices that are perfectly good and have a good couple of years left in their life cycle. That being said, you also have to think about whether it's actually economical to spend money and time investing in upgrading your existing kit to Windows 11 if potentially there's only a year or so left in the life cycle of that device. So as a rule of thumb, we tend to work with the Cyber Essentials standard, which is not using devices more than 5 years after they were released. And that's usually because manufacturers tend to stop releasing drivers after 5 years. It's not always the case, but you can check on the manufacturer's website for your computer. If you look up the make and model of your device, you should be able to see whether they are still releasing drivers for it. But generally, if your computer's more than 5 years old, you should have a really serious think about whether it is worth investing in replacing that hardware. Now, it's not that easy for all businesses. Some businesses simply cannot afford to upgrade the hardware. Maybe you're a very small business, maybe you're having a bad year like a lot of businesses have had, or maybe you're a non-profit and your policy is only to replace hardware when it breaks. So the decision really depends on your business circumstances, but if you can afford to do so, we'd really recommend not spending money upgrading hardware that's more than 5 years old or released more than 5 years ago. You also need to actually check that your hardware supports Windows 11. Now, for all of our clients, we use an RMM tool, which is a remote monitoring and management tool, which is like an asset tracking system with a whole load of other functionality. and that will clearly tell us against each device in there whether it supports Windows 11 in terms of the hardware. So we can very quickly give our clients that information. Perhaps your IT have a similar tool, but if not, there are a couple of ways that you can check. You can look up on the manufacturer's website for your computer and see whether they have drivers for Windows 11. Alternatively, you can also download the Microsoft PC Health Check app, which I'll put a link for in the video description, and that will run checks on your system to confirm whether it supports Windows 11. In terms of the upgrade process, there are a couple of ways that you can go. You can use tools like Microsoft Intune if you have it, or RMM tools or other device management platforms that you may have in place to automatically upgrade to Windows 11. This is something that you can schedule to do out of hours. There will be a bit of logistics involved in asking people to leave their computer switched on and making sure that you don't have those computers going configured to go to sleep when they're not in use. And there are also going to be some computers that just fail to complete the upgrade process. Actually, generally it is recommended to just do a fresh install of Windows 11 rather than trying to do an upgrade, because you can have a lot of problems doing the upgrade. However, this is a lot more time consuming, a lot more disruptive, and it will most likely be a lot more expensive. So you really have to weigh up the pros and cons here, and again, think about whether it is worth using the hardware you've got. If you do decide to deploy a fresh version of Windows 11, you can use so many different tools like Autopilot with Microsoft Intune to help automate that build process. And if you don't already have those kind of tools in place, have a serious think about whether it's worth doing so. Or you can use imaging tools. There are loads of paid and free imaging tools available that you can use. So there are ways that you can really streamline that process, but still it's going to be a much bigger, much more disruptive project. So you have to just weigh up the pros and cons here. Finally, in terms of cost saving ideas, you need to have a really good think about how you're actually using your hardware. If you're still a business that has both desktop computers and laptops for their staff, you should think about whether you can consolidate that and just have laptops rather than having to replace both devices. You can actually use your laptop like a desktop using a device called a docking station, which is a really small device that sits on your desk and connects your screens, your keyboard, your mouse, all to this one little box, and then you just have one cable that you connect from that box to your laptop. So it's really easy. You come in the morning, put your laptop on the desk, plug that one cable in, and you can use your laptop as if it was a desktop computer. Now that does mean carrying your laptop to and from work. So if you do need to replace your laptop, you could replace it with a smaller device, especially if you're going to generally be using it with external monitors, and making sure that it's a lightweight device. So maybe you can spend a bit more money on getting that slim, lightweight laptop rather than replacing both. Additionally, if you're looking at a really huge hardware refresh, depending on how big your company is, how many devices you have, you could look at hardware leasing options. That does add a layer of complexity, especially if you're a growing business and need to keep adding to that. And there are generally a lot of minimum thresholds for leasing contracts, but that's something you can talk to your IT or service provider about. Let's take a quick recap. You have to upgrade to Windows 11 before the 14th of October 2025. So start planning now, start talking with your IT, or if you are IT watching this video, start talking with the decision makers in the company about options and giving them a recommended way forward. You have to upgrade because continued use of Windows 10 after the 14th of October 2025 will be a major security risk to your business, and will become less and less stable. All the applications that you're using will gradually start to experience problems or just be not supported at all. So you really want to get out of Windows 10 before that date. And Windows 11, really not that much different from an end user perspective. So you don't need to worry really about delivering training, but you do need to make sure that all of your software does support Windows 11 before you can think about doing an upgrade. Your two options really are upgrade, which you can do free of charge. You don't have to pay for an extra license, but there may be some project costs if you're working with an outside IT consultant and don't have an internal IT team, or if your hardware is released more than 5 years ago and you can afford to replace it, then have a serious think about just replacing that hardware with newer equipment that supports Windows 11. Thank you for watching, and if you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up, drop a comment with your feedback or any questions that you have, and please subscribe to our channel.